Alrighty. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is part 2 of our leadership training series, Growing from Manager to GM. If you haven't joined an Opus webinar before, my name is Sarah Delgado. I am on the marketing team here at Opus. We host these webinars monthly. They are designed, so thank you all for coming. A few notes and housekeeping. Questions and comments are always welcomed. You have the chat to interact with us. If you're new to Riverside, this is our recording studio. As an audience member, you have the option to request a live call-in so that you can join the session and ask your question face-to-face, or you can drop it in the chat. I have questions that were pulled from the registration that we'll be answering at the end, so just keep that in mind. And then as part of our webinar series, we have a recap and training examples that will be shared post-session. But don't be a stranger. Reach out if you have a clip or if there's anything in the session that you want to follow up on. What we'll learn today. So with Alan and Megan, our lovely panelists, we'll be mapping out the next level of growth for your frontline managers. If you joined part 1 of our series, we talked about how to get your hourly team members to that manager level. So for part 2 today, we'll be talking about managers to that GM stage. We'll also be covering how to develop an internal pipeline of talent. We know that manager training is really designed to help foster aspiring talent within your teams. And we'll also be sharing a firsthand example of leadership training that Megan and Alan have worked on together. So without...
Thanks for having me, Sarah. Alan Rogers, I'm Vice President of Organizational Learning and Development for FSC Franchise Company. We're the parent company and franchisor of Beef O'Brady's and the Brass Tap Craft Beer Bar. Excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Megan Amodio. I'm the Senior Director of Training Ops Services currently at Huddle House. Just like Alan said, very excited and happy to be here.
Great. So to kick off our session, I'd really love to talk about this program called Develop from Within, which is something that you two have worked on together and I believe implemented while you were both working together at Huddle House.
Yeah, so Megan and I worked together at Huddle, both in the training and ops service department, and we were tasked with developing a leadership development program that was for developing people from within. We wanted to make sure that we did develop a program that could be utilized for external hires. But really, we wanted to focus in on, a career path and a career journey and leadership development for our internal people. And so that was something that Megan and I worked together on at Huddle. And then as I transitioned over to FSC, it's one of our major initiatives here for 2024. And we're in the process of launching our first kind of module for that, which is our kind of key holder to a shift manager development program. So it's kind of taking that key employee and getting them into shift management, and then building out the rest of the continual evolution of that career journey for that employee.
That's great. Megan, since you're currently carrying out this...
We've seen just a lot more movement from especially that hourly position to the shift manager. And I think it really comes from the fact that we've done a lot better job of just informing kind of the next steps. And we didn't have that. And with Develop from Within, it really lays out kind of what you need to do, what you need to focus on, for the next level of growth. And so therefore, people that might be interested or they didn't know if they were interested, now they know if it's definitely a fit for them or if it's something they want to go after, because it's spelled out so nicely within this program. Whereas when we didn't have that, people are kind of left hanging. I don't really know if I want to grow here. I don't know if I'm interested in it. But we've kind of conquered that with this program. So it's been really nice.
Just to clarify, with Develop from Within, is this a program that team members are invited to join when they reach a certain level?
It can be both. It can be both on there. We really are trying to just kind of get the word out when we first launched this. And the big learning curve was for the actual kind of the district managers and the general managers to be on board with this. So not only do we identify the candidates that we really want to move through this, hopefully we're talking about enough in the stores, and we've seen some kind of organic movement where people are actually approaching us saying, hey, I heard about this in a pre-shift. I heard about this at our team meeting. What do I got to do? I'm really interested in, next steps, next level. And so it's both, they get to opt into it, but it's also us identifying the candidates that we really, really want to go through this as well. I think it's something that we're definitely shooting toward. That is the goal as we build programs like this and we continuously add to this. Develop from within definitely is the foundation. We want to continuously be adding, more material, more growth, more development, more modules that house all these kind of things, soft skills, you name it. So this is kind of the first step shop that Alan and I got to work on together to launch. But I really hope that as this grows and we can get the whole system through it, that absolutely this is something that people say, wow, at Huddle House, they're really just promoting from within. They get developed, they have an actual solid career path from the minute they step foot in that door as an hourly team member.
That's great.
Yeah, it gives the opportunity for people to have more of a career than just a job. And, that's a powerful thing. I know when I started off in the industry, I first started off in high school and thought it was just going to be a job, but I started off with McDonald's, who has a tremendous leadership development program, and it turned more into a career.
Fantastic. So without further ado, let's dive into snippets from this program. A lot of the times in manager training, something that we get asked often at Opus is what portion of it should be completed and what portion of it should be in person versus what portion should be assisted digitally. And Alan, you've shared.
Yeah, this is that first module that we developed for that shift manager, and this is just a snippet of the kind of daily objectives. It's the first page of them. There's obviously more days than just 3, but it's that kind of balancing the in person with the digital training. So here, like the trainee would have daily objectives that they've got to accomplish, and it just gives out what those objectives are. Now, for our management development program, we do use also a participant workbook. We think it's important for there to be both the digital component and then to have a workbook that they can take notes in. They can write their thoughts in. They can later go back and reference that. I know that's something as I was developing as a manager, I would go back and look back at different workshops I'd been through or different training modules or programs for notes. So we think it's important for that participant to have that. We start the workbooks kind of when they get in the management level. Before that, most of the training is done through the LMS as far as modules, and then you have that blended training where you have in-person training on the floor and then the manager sign-offs. So this is kind of that first part. I think on the next slide, it goes into a little bit more kind of that blended in-person and digital training together. So if you start looking at the objectives, so when you start breaking down that first objective, you can see there's an LMS component to it. So if you look in that meet the objective section, it has where they're going to watch a culture of team module that we have. And then they're going to complete a culture of team planning activity. And then they're going to share and have a conversation with the GM on planning, how would they achieve that objective in their restaurant and get done. And they can take down notes and, on how they were able to achieve it.
That's great.
And then, yeah.
I wanted to call something out here. This general structure, is this something that you inherited from like a previous company, or was this something that you kind of created from scratch in terms of like finding things that you do well, do better? And then what I love about this like worksheet is that it's framed really positively. And I think to be a good manager, you have to be naturally positive and kind of holding the torch for your team. Is that?
Well, first off, I want to give a big shout out to our instructional designer here, Kirsten Wilson. She's been the one that put together the program, and she does a fantastic job. And she comes from an education background and really all of our materials are well grounded in kind of making sure we're kind of protecting that trainee and also having a positive environment around it. So she's done a great job with that. As far as like the structure of the overall, what things you need as far as developing into a manager, I think honestly it's a blend of kind of my experience, our operations experience, Kirsten's experience of how it's the best program and what soft skills, what hard skills do they need to learn to become an effective leader within our organization and our different brands. And some of it's a little bit different from one brand to the other because they have different, one's a family oriented kind of sports bar, and the other is a dynamic kind of bar in itself with great kind of gastropub food. So it's a little bit of different in how you lead those brands.
That's a great point. I didn't think about how the brand and the culture of the company can influence how you raise up managers.
Culture definitely plays a role in that. I think depending where you're at, you can see some companies that just do that really, really well, and they're just known for it. They know they move people up the ranks. You just know, hey, it's such a healthy culture. And I think a lot of it has to do with, they really retain their team and they develop those team members that they have on board. We all know unhealthy cultures too, where they just continuously have turnover, and you just see it within their brand. At Huddle House, it's something that we're definitely striving to do to have growth from within, right? So developing our team members within, so that people, that, like you said, Huddle House is going to be known for, hey, they just have an awesome culture. And a lot of that is, hey, they bring on team members and they develop them all the way up. And it just really makes for a strong foundation of our brand and just our team as well.
Absolutely. Okay, I wanted to move to the next slide here. So, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so first off, the page that you see to the right is in the workbook for the participant. And so they fill it out, as far as did they accomplish, the different objectives for the day. And that's kind of what that top section is. And then they put the things they did well, areas they need to practice, good habits, and my goals for tomorrow. And then in our LMS system, which we're converting over to Opus, and one of the things I love about Opus is it has the functionality of check-ins, which is really skill verifications that the manager can either do or delegate it to other managers or a level we call it star trainer here that they can do. And in that case, the check-in mirrors this a little bit in that it has, did the trainee accomplish these objectives? You give them a rating of 1 to 10. And then you can put notes. And then at the bottom, it asks these questions, but instead of it saying things I did well, things the trainee did well, area where the trainee needs more practice. So for that check-in and skill verification is written to the manager or the trainer that's doing it. And so that way, the trainee has what they felt they did, and then they can have a conversation between the two of how the manager or trainer, kind of felt about their performance for the day, and talk about, what goals for tomorrow.
That's great. Yeah, I think with check-ins, especially, you get to store all the data digitally. That's important to know that this person is ready for their next step in their training, and then the paper or like the workbook just gets to be this literature that they get to hold on to.
Yeah, exactly.
And something physical for the exercise.
Yeah, and it's so important to have that kind of skill discussion or performance discussion of how well they did before they move on to the next objectives, so that if they need more practice or they're not quite ready, we don't want to overwhelm them by giving them the next day's worth of objectives. One of the things that we try to emphasize is that we want the flexibility for it to either be it has a time bound component to it, like it'll say day 1, day 2, day 3, but really it's more about the objectives. If it takes you 3 days to get through day 1's objectives, and the training score is good with that, then that's fine. We want that flexibility to make sure we're not pushing people too far, as long as they're developing and trying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Megan, thank you for sharing samples of your general manager training. For those who aren't familiar, this is out of Crunch Time, which is your LMS. And this kind of maps out, I guess if you think about it, like an outline.
Correct. So our system is kind of set up. So general manager here showcasing kind of the highest level. And so they're going to have everything. You see shift manager right there. You see assistant, server, cook training. They've taken it all. When you were assigned a shift manager, you would not see all this information. You would just see the content that would be applicable to that title, right? So they would see the server, they'd see the cook, they'd see the team member, things like that. But we found with this, it's really nice, is we can assign these modules and the information ahead of time. So if it's someone that just comes to us or that we identify and say, hey, we really think you'd make a great shift manager. Are you interested? Sometimes they've never thought about that. They didn't, like Alan said before, they don't even think about this as a career. They think about it like, hey, I'm a cook, I'm a server. They don't even understand that they have just an amazing skill set that people can see. And so sometimes, they're curious. And so what we can do is we can go in here and go ahead and assign the shift manager title to them. And this just allows them to see the modules, see the content, start reading, and really just kind of gain insight to, hey, this is what this next position would look like. This is what this next wave of development would look like. And am I interested or not? Another thing it does is it allows them to kind of see without committing, right? It's less scary. It's, hey, I can kind of commit to this or start to learn, or, hey, I think I can do this skill set. So let me kind of think about it, take my time. And when they're ready to make that move, we can ease them into it versus just saying, hey, tomorrow you're a shift manager and go, which a lot of times, unfortunately, happens, right? We're short staffed, or, hey, you're the next best person to be an assistant. And we put them in that role and they're not ready or they're unsure. And so this has really allowed us to structure things out so that the people that will be going into these roles can view things ahead of time and really just kind of take it all in, which has been very helpful.
That totally makes sense. I love the idea of having the training be available when they're not at that level yet, so that they can kind of decide and start to dive in. Do you feel like you've seen higher rates of people moving up?
I think so. I definitely think so. I think a lot more conversation. So when I go into stores and new store openings, there's a lot more conversation about, hey, someday I want to be a GM, or I really want to be an assistant, or, I've just been identified as a shift manager. I'm so excited. I want to work to be an assistant within the next 6 months. And I think all that really stems from, the district managers, the GMs have done a really good job of talking about this program, talking about the career path we now offer, and then letting them see this program. Whereas before, if there's no conversations being had, which we really didn't have a lot of conversations going on because there wasn't anything to show them. There was actually no set path where they could actually view it. And now we have it. So a lot more conversation for sure. I think the biggest jump that we've seen is we have a lot more hourly team members that are really interested and have made that leap to the shift manager role, which is huge for us though.
That's great. What else besides having the training available do you?
I really think it's just the knowledge. I think, Alan said, like, I got in the industry same. It was my first job. I was bussing tables. I was too young to serve. And I never thought about this as a possible career. And, at the time I didn't have a program like this to view, or someone saying, at that time I was so far detached from like the general manager at like a busser level. And so I think just the knowledge of it, knowledge is power. So I think just knowing has really opened that door for people. So these would be, you see right there on the left where you're scrolling. So this would be where their team members are entered in, but the levels are kind of along the top up there. And so this tracker right here, I just wanted to kind of showcase our dashboard and how easy this is. And so we would just go through and the team members would be right there on the left, and we can assign any one of these development modules to them. So they can, we were talking about assigning them ahead of time. And so safety, you see right there, you see shift manager, you see assistant. So if I'm a current shift manager, I'm very interested in becoming an assistant, and they say, hey, there's a few things you need to work on, or hey, it's going to take, these skill sets need to be at the next level, they can just go in here and assign those to me, and I can start to view them on my own and just gain a little bit of information and insight. And so this is a really nice way for us to track on there. And also, as Ellen said, things are not bound by time, but they definitely help us time the training. So if someone does start, the assistant manager training, if I were to start that and they assign it to me, and all of a sudden I'm weeks past like where I should be taking my modules and some of the certifications in there, it's going to notify them, hey, Megan's way behind. So either I'm not understanding it, it's time for some of those check-ins on a more regular basis, or I'm not interested, or I've just fallen behind and need more help, or I just haven't checked anything off, right? So that's also a red flag. So it really just helps whoever's governing this whole program and really developing from within, it helps really keep them structured. And so it's a one-stop shop for that person to see.
Yeah, it looks like a grid of like areas of opportunity for like the next level. That's a great layout. We have something similar in Opus, but it's nice to see how it's displayed in another platform because it's all of the same methodology. And just to make sure we get this asked, but are you also taking a blended approach? Great. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for walking through that example. I want to pivot to the next section of our webinar where we'll be mapping out the journey to GM. So we're going to go through these touchstones or these different roles. They're not exact to Huddle and FSC Franchise Co. I think they're tweaked per brand, but we're going to go from key holder all the way to GM, kind of profile like what does the right candidate look like? How do you accelerate their growth along those journeys? And then talk a lot about soft skill development, which is like core to manager training. So for our career journey, we're going to start with key holder, move over to shift manager, which we've already kind of started talking about, then to the assistant manager, and then finally the GM. So from a key holder to a shift manager, like you said, like they are going from an hourly team member who has kind of already mastered the hard skills of their role. They're hungry for more. What other skills?
Yeah, I think for us on the that key holder to shift manager is, we want somebody that's obviously dependable and responsible, but somebody that really is good with communication, because now they're going to start running shifts. They've got to be able to communicate with both the employees on the shift as well as the guests that are there as well. So communications a real big one. We want somebody that can, kind of multitask and juggle things. As a shift manager, you're sometimes going to be, pulling a station a little bit there too. So we want them to be somebody that's multitask. We want somebody that can handle, like difficult conversations with a guest. So they got to be able to be empathetic and be able to, kind of have, conversations where maybe a guest is upset. And then we have a, litany of other kind of criteria. And for us, what we do is we have two phases of developing somebody into a shift manager. We have an introduction to shift management, which is that first program that we were showing there with the different objectives for the day to build out those skills. And then we have an advanced shift management program. And that's where they start to learn the skills to develop them into potential assistant managers. So the intro is really getting them ready to start running a shift. As a key holder, they might have come in and either opened the restaurant or closed the restaurant or bar or watched it, while the manager was maybe at the bank. Shift manager now, they're actually running that as the single source of leadership sometimes in the restaurant. So we've got that introductory level to get them up to that. And then we start teaching them some more advanced concepts. And we want that to be incremental. So how you have a conversation, a performance conversation, when you're a shift manager is a lot different than you might have as an assistant manager or as a general manager. So as they progress through their career, incrementally, we're progressing their soft skill training there as well to be able to handle the different responsibilities at the different levels, not making it so overwhelming to them in the beginning.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I think they progress throughout the different
mhm.
modules. Again, like how you and even the hard skills, like how we would teach somebody working with, toast or crunch time, what a shift manager does with that, and what an assistant manager or general manager does are different. So you want to have incremental training that doesn't just throw everything at them at one time.
Understood. When you're trying to teach soft skills like communication and guest service, what are some approaches that you take in terms of like is there
For us, yes, we do both of that. If you went through the activities day to day in the program, you'll see there's activities each day where there's going to be some role play. Also, in the training that they do on the LMS, there's some videos that they watch, and then they answer some questions about what they saw, what they should do, different things like that. So it's kind of a combination of different training where they see some scenarios on the LMS, but they also practice those, on the floor with their trainer there as well.
something that we get asked all the time, and Megan, I'd love your input here too, is how do you measure soft skills? So how do you like score and assess those skills to determine whether or not they're ready to move from shift manager to assistant manager? Um,
Yeah, I think she directly. Yes.
wow,
Yeah,
I
I think
did
that.
not. Oh,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead,
think
Alex.
that's a great. Yeah, I was going to say I think that's a great point that Megan brings up. Is there's a lot of metrics that can show you where soft skill issues might be, like she said, turnover percentage or guest complaints, or if sales are down. Like you can start to look at certain metrics that would show up if you are not properly training and executing kind of the soft skills that you've learned. So I think that's a great point, Megan.
Agreed. Okay, great. I'd love to move forward to shift manager to assistant manager. Um, happy to kind of tee this one up. When you're moving from shift manager to assistant manager, you're growing in your responsibilities, you're growing in your role. You're also kind of growing in like your presence within the organization too. So, um, would you say that this is a bigger leap to go from shift manager to assistant? Understood.
Yeah, I would agree with Megan on that. And I think if you just where you develop somebody to a shift manager and then you kind of drop their development until you're going to promote them to assistant, then it becomes a bigger leap. But really, what you want is ongoing, continuous training. So you're developing that shift manager, like Megan said. They've now developed the initial skills. You want to continue to develop that person, even though they're at that shift manager level, so that they are the next best candidate for assistant manager. So you don't want to just kind of finish their training once they finish that initial shift management training. You want to, whether it's through leadership development webinars or workshops or additional content you push down to shift managers. You want it to continue so that training is incremental and you don't overwhelm them going from one level to the next. I think if you struggle with that, you probably should look at, well, between those two training programs, what can we introduce that would minimize the that step effect that you're having.
Hmm. So between, I guess, webinars and workshops, maybe additional training resources, are there any other investments that you made in your assistant managers?
Well, for us, some of the things that we've done to kind of improve, and again, we're developing out that whole program for here. So I don't want to make it seem like, hey, we've got this already launched, but the things that we are developing is, each of the uh, levels has a progression as far as the soft skills go. And then, one of the other aspects is really making sure that we set that manager up for the assistant manager up for success by also teaching them the brand specific kind of system oriented tasks. So, we've got to teach them how, because as they're starting to do the assistant manager job, they're starting to take on more responsibility. So they might be doing the ordering, they might be doing order pars, and so really we're trying to develop brand specific content that's kind of more in a I would say micro learning video where we break up that information into smaller bites, and they can learn just certain sections of, if they're going to take over inventory management, we can
Mm-hmm.
build a module that has multiple courses in it of certain how to determine pars, how to forecast sales, how to do an order, and then you can have a check-in for each of those type things to make sure that they're progressing. So our investment in them is both from a soft skill, hard skill, and really making a lot of additional content that's really specific to set them up for success.
I love
Not
that.
sure if that was where you were going with that question or not, but
Yeah, no, I mean, they're becoming more integral to your operations. So
yeah,
there are parts of the business that they might not have been familiar with before that they get to have their hands on.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that's great. Awesome. I guess that takes us naturally into our last step here of like assistant manager. Yeah, I know. It was the perfect segue. So, thinking of the GM, you are steering the ship. You are in the highest, I guess, position of leadership for frontline. Um, to develop that talent internally is like such a huge accomplishment for both teams. Like, what is the goal for like? I guess what is like what are the basic requirements of any GM?
Yeah, so we have like a whole like program that has like, hey, here's the job description, here's kind of the criteria. It's got both kind of a soft skills and a hard skills um, rating form, and not where we score it with points or anything, but just is that person, proficient in that skill, or do we need to continue to work on them? So to become a general manager, there's a lot more that I could probably list off just off my head here. But we do have a full program that kind of identifies all those things that make the person that we're looking for kind of qualified, and then what things do we need to continue to develop that person. And the kind of the great thing about having those skills identified is then that also allows us to have the conversations of what do people need to do from a development plan to make themselves a great candidate to be the next GM, and what do we need, what do we owe them in their development to make them either a better well-rounded assistant manager or a great ideal candidate for general manager from that. And then even after that, again, once you kind of get somebody through the training of general manager, we actually have a transition plan for them too, because usually that means a general manager, they're going in and taking over a restaurant, and most of the time, especially if they're going through a training program, they haven't done that before, or at least haven't done that in our brand. So we want a transition plan that really helps set them up for success, so that, especially on our corporate owned stores, we want to have more of a structured process for how we transition a new person into that role.
Mhm.
And then I guess lastly, we want to make sure that we continue to have a kind of a roadmap afterwards for continual learning for that GM. Again, we don't want to just, hey, they completed the GM training program, we're done as far as developing them. We want, like if you were looking at a roadmap, you might see GM, and then the next level is DM. But you want to have those, what things can we do to enhance and elevate them as a manager between those two steps on the map.
That's great. I love that you carve out a transition plan as they go in to move into their own location. Um, in terms of like hurdles to get to the GM role, like what do you think are like the what would you say are like
I think for us, it's you are going up a, a level in responsibility there that some people relish, and some people might not want to take on that responsibility. So, we do want our um, general managers to have that kind of ownership mentality, that this is their baby. This is um, their restaurant, their bar. And so sometimes that's a little overwhelming, and that's where we want to make sure we do our due diligence of planning that transition well, so they don't get in and become very overwhelmed, stressed, and feel like they made a bad decision in taking on that
Mhm.
general manager role. A lot of times they're not taking over a restaurant because the other person got promoted.
Mhm.
So a lot of times they're taking over a lot of issues too, and so you got to be cognizant of that, especially if it's a new GM.
Absolutely. How what does that conversation sound like and how does it take place? I guess, or to revise this question, my I've always wondered, like, as you kind of progress within um your organization, I think your relationship with corporate kind of changes. So how do you conduct that conversation? How do you thinking of like feedback as a soft skill? Wow, I mean, it's amazing that have you've been able to take that kind of retro and now apply a program and also share it out. Um, that's great. Teach, don't tell. Opportunity
Yeah,
to
I mean, I think that's a great program to have, and I think it's really speaks highly to Megan and her abilities to kind of analyze that and say, hey, here's where we're missing the boat here, and creating something to help bridge that gap. So I think that was a great point.
agreed. Well, we're coming up on time. I want to make sure that we're able to address any questions from the audience. I have a few queued up by. Okay. One quick question for either of you. I mean, feel free to tackle this as you'd like. Um, when you think about the growth track of a manager, that once they know they're on that track, there's probably a lot of pressure. How do you handle like regression if you see any like with those candidates? Have you something that came up in our last webinar was establishing this like network of peers or network of managers that they can kind of learn from so that they don't feel alone.
For us, we haven't. Again, we're just kind of um, reimagining and redoing our full leadership development program. However, one of the big aspects with it is that we are making sure that it is a blended training program. So you do have that in person coaching on the floor and training, so that that person isn't just watching modules on a computer and then going out and being expected to be able to complete those tasks, or be able to execute the training that they watched. So I think having that blended learning does do that. I think it's a great idea if you can kind of put a buddy with somebody, or have where they have somebody um, that's even at their level that they can go to, so that they don't feel like they don't want to go up to a superior or a higher level person, but that they have kind of that network of peers that they can go to and bounce things off in a safe environment. I think that's great if you can have that.
That is really cool. I love the idea of like going back to school. We have we've been talking a lot about like continuous learning and ongoing training, especially for tenured managers, because once you're in that position, it's like, what does training look like at that point once you've mastered um, all of your roles and responsibilities? How do you continue to grow? And I think the universities in your field. Great. All right. I don't know if we're going to get any questions from the chat. I might pop one more in. Um, or since we have 2 minutes left, we can close this out. But Megan, Alan, thank you so much for joining our session today. You're both incredibly valuable assets to your organizations. I thank you. Like, I've learned so much during this session. Um, and thank you for sharing examples from your LMS. And of course, Megan, I think like showing accountability of something that wasn't working at Huddle House, how you approached it, developed a program, and implemented that is so powerful. For next steps after this session, we'll be sharing out a recap within the next week with a plug for our April session. If you haven't been in the loop, we had a hospitality training 360 report go out last month. That will be available. That's available on our website right now. And we're going to do a live readout of benchmarks and insights. So stay tuned. And then if you're not already receiving our newsletter, you can simply sign up by going to our website, opus.so. We promise we won't spam you. I'm the one sending the emails. So you'll only get the good stuff, I promise. Thank you so much for joining. Have a
Thank
great
you
rest
for
of your
having
day.
us. It's great to see you.
Bye.
Bye.